Service. Today we are going to talk about the M16 Stahlhelm. The M16 in particular. We're not going to go beyond that in this video, that'll be outside the scope of this video. But what we will also do is talk about what came before, and then just a quick delve into what came after. So naturally, when talking about German headgear, you need to start with the ubiquitous picklehaube. Now, contrary to popular belief, this is actually originally Russian, and the Germans didn't adopt it until 1842, after the Russians had already replaced all of their shackles. The final German state to adopt it was the Bavarian state in 1887. They're all made of boiled leather. They're not really, to stop shrapnel or artillery. The spike in particular is to stop sabre blows from above when you're fighting cavalry. The picklehaube as a whole was adopted by many militaries during the Victorian times. It's fairly ubiquitous. The Americans had their own home service helmet. The British, it later became the bobby helmet, which is quite famous, as well as the pith, borrowed from the design, although it's made from cork as opposed to leather. This particular haube is a rather poor reproduction, so we won't dwell on it. But as soon as World War I started, there was an issue. A lot of the leather came from Argentina, and with blockades from the Royal Navy, it was getting increasingly harder to bring in the leather to make the haubes. So they moved on to what's called ersatz designs, or supplementary designs. Now already by 1915 they did replace the brass with matted steel. The spike became removable, as in trench warfare it's not exactly needed to have a spike, there's not much cavalry in the trenches. But to supplement the leather, the Germans relied on their extensive textiles industry. Went to something like this with felt. Of course, this isn't a picklehaube, this is actually a shackle used by Jaegers, logistics, transport, anything like that. But the picklehaubes were fairly similar to this, where it is compressed felt, as well as numerous other different materials that they had available. So in 1915, the German army started making changes. They had detachable spikes, still made from leather, but it was getting increasingly harder to bring across from Argentina. So they went on to this. They relied on their extensive pre-war textiles industry to make these out of compressed felt. Of course, this is a shackle, not a haube. They did make haube versions. It's just a shackle that I have. There's a really good reproduction made by an Alex Gall on Facebook. A lot of the fittings were replaced with matted steel, so they don't shine so much. You do see them with regular brass haube plates. So much variation when it comes to these ersatz, or supplementary haubes and shackles, that no matter what I did with this, it would essentially be accurate. We can have some pictures of the examples of the haubes as well as the shackles. They also made them out of cork, stuff like that as well. It's just whatever was available. But of course, even compared to the leather, this is going to provide even less of head protection. Why do we need the Stahlhelm? Now this really came of age in the Western Front, where most of the time it was trench fighting, and the only thing that was really showing was your head, bobbing up and down along the trench line. This led to a lot of casualties to shrapnel. So a helmet is not designed to be bulletproof, it's designed to be shrapnel proof. So whenever you're at the front, you just need something to cover your head, so when a shell lands, even outside of the trench, none of the shrapnel is going to go through your head. So it came down in the December of 1915 when the German government commissioned two physicians, Friedrich Schwerd and August Beer, to make a steel helmet. Now at the same time, the French were doing the same. I believe they already had the Adrian helmet at the time, and of course in Britain we were doing the same. When it comes to the British and French helmets, the French helmets are extremely ornate, and I think the British helmet is too specified for trench warfare. You know, it's got that brim because it's all coming over the top. It doesn't really cover your ears. But they didn't come up with this straight away. At first they had the Gaida helmet, which is literally just really thick front plate. It was just really thick front plate that had like a little nose piece. Very medieval in nature. But of course that was seen as inadequate. They wanted more all-around head cover. So we got this, the M16 Stahlhelm. It's made of a chromium nickel steel, and unlike the aforementioned helmets, it's got really good ear and neck protection. Initially, they had what was called the square dip design, and that's a difference along here. Though they ended up having to change that. Apparently it was seen as a manufacturing defect. So in front of me, I've got 3 helmets, 2 reproductions, 1 original. These 2 are the M16s. This is the Epic Militaria production that I've repainted in a previous video. So if you want to see how I've done that, you can go back and watch that. It's across 3 shorts. What features do we have on these helmets? They have lugs on the inside to make them compatible with the chin straps off of the previous picklehaubes. I despise this feature, to be honest, and it makes sense that they changed it later on. Although it was good to be able to reuse straps, these straps were made from a veg tan leather, so that it didn't rely on imports from Argentina, and they had loads of them lying around anyway. But really it's not that good of an attachment system for a combat helmet. Something else that is very ubiquitous with the early Great War Stahlhelms are these lugs. These are for fitting not stern shield, that's Austrian, sorry, Sternpanzer, which is like translates to forehead armor, or stern shield, the Austrian version, is forehead shield. So they're quite large, and they're, yeah, as I said, they're very ubiquitous. We'll get a picture up of the smaller sizes, as the size 60 and above, excuse me, the size 66 and above have these uniform shape, whereas for the smaller helmets they have a step shape. I'll bring that up on the screen. These also doubled up as vents to keep breathability of the head, you know, when you're sweating too much. I have a liner in this original one. It's not an original liner, it is a reproduction liner, but it's fully leather construction around the brim with padding. It is rather comfortable. It's very good. The only difference I'll say between a reproduction helmet and an original, other than price, is the weight. These original ones are actually really good lightweight helmets. And we'll have a picture on screen. They are good when it comes to shrapnel, even bullets. Ernst Junger, the writer of Storm of Steel, actually took a rifle round to the head and it just grazed past and went through the helmet. But because they're quite large, which is something else that's, you know, very iconic when it comes to the German army in the First World War, is these large helmets, because there's plenty of rim there, went straight past. When Friedrich and August, they were doing their trials and tests, something they noticed was an increase in casualties. Now, casualties don't mean deaths. That's something that a lot of people misconstrue. A casualty is anything that takes you out of the fight. Whether, you know, you're sick for a day, you're technically a casualty. So these people who normally would have died to their head injuries with the shrapnel are now actually surviving, and a lot of the time, you know, you could be healed up and sent back out to the front. So overall, the helmet turned out to be quite a really good success. Now, if you do have a Stahlhelm of your own, these are over 100 years old now, but you might be able to see some stamps on the inside. I should be able to get some pictures. Now, all of them would say ET, and then size 60, 64, 66, all the way up to size 70. But the ET is the manufacturer. As far as I could find, the only manufacturer I know of is Eisenhüttenwerke Teil, and they produced the vast majority of the helmets during the war, especially the very early productions. So initially these helmets were, as I said, they were for trench warfare, so they were mostly given to soldiers on the Western Front. One story that I've heard is the Alten Corps, when they were in Verdun in 1916, they were issued helmets for the duration, but when they were sent back to the Eastern Front, they actually had to hand in their helmets because it just wasn't seen as a necessity out on the Eastern Front, where trench warfare wasn't as common. So now we need to talk about what came after. Well, these helmets being such a success, the various Central Powers started to buy them off the Germans, one of them being the Austrians. Now, the Austrians had their own helmet as well that they were working on, the Braundorf, but the majority of their helmets were M16s or M16 derivative. Now, this will probably be a video on its own. There's so much variations between the Austrian ones, but something that's mostly common between them are these cloth chin straps and a metal headband for the liner. I actually prefer this liner. I don't know why. I just like the metal. Instead of holes, it's kind of like a slit. So when I was putting a reproduction liner into this M16, I had to drill a new hole for the pins because they just didn't line up, whereas there's no risk of that. So it's actually quite good if there's any variation in manufacture. Later on, the Austrians, before the Germans in 1917, did ditch these bales from the picklehaube and did go to a conventional chin strap system. This happened in 1918 for the Germans, as well as a common complaint was you can't really hear with the helmet because it covers your ears, so they had like these cutout helmets. Still so much debate on what these cutout helmets were actually for, but the best example I could find from it was a film that came out in the 1930s where the officer has a cutout helmet and he says, "Oh, it's so I can hear my men better and command and control."
Kompanie, angedreht! Danke. Das Gewehr! Über! In Gruppen rechts schwenkt! Marsch! Alle! Aus! Nachrüstung kann geraucht werden!
But of course that's a story for another time. So what do I think of the Stahlhelm? It's a good weight. The original ones are so much better than the repros in terms of weight. It's a very ubiquitous design. I mean, it would go on up until the early 50s. Both East and West Germany were starting to replace them. It's very modern in terms of a helmet. It might be a bit big. The skirts are massive brim, but I don't mind that. I prefer the look of this and later German examples. The main issue with these helmets, in my opinion, are just the chin strap attachment systems. And they rectified that during the war. It's just a very good helmet design. As I said, my reproductions are from Epic Militaria. They do need to be repainted for World War I condition, but as you can see side by side, they are very close. But please let me know what you think about these helmets, how they stack up to the ornamental nature of the French helmet or the very trench orientated design of the British helmets. And if you like this video, please be sure to like it. If you want more Mountain Men content, if you want to look at some cool pictures that we take during events, be sure to follow us on our Instagram or join our Discord. And of course, please like and comment, share this video with your friends if you found it informative. And thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.